Hello and welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of Sip of Sunshine. I'm your host, Chrissa Wadlow. I'm also the founder of Sunshine Support, and today I'm going to be speaking to Libby Hill about all the things that make Libby, Libby. So let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of our second season of Sip of Sunshine. I'm Chrissa Wadlow. I'm your host today and also the founder of Sunshine Support. And I've got with me a lovely guest today. I'm not on my own. Woohoo! I've got the amazing Libby Hill. Morning, Libby.
Good morning.
Or afternoon. I mean, whenever you're watching it. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Yeah,
Oh,
a bit irritated because I've just come out of a review meeting, but
you know,
I won't be irritated now.
yeah, we'll just chill and we'll just have a little chat. And I thought today, actually, I think everybody has seen your webinars on selective mutism, PDA, autism, ADHD, as well as obviously speech, language, and communication, and DLD, and so many other topics. Because I mean, we've covered so many topics over the years. And I was in Wales earlier this week supporting families there, and one of the parents came up to me and said, "You've got Libby Hill coming down here in the summer." And I said, "Yeah." She went, "Oh, I've watched loads of her webinars. She's amazing. She's seen me through the last 10 years with my kids." And
Oh,
so it was just lovely to hear that feedback, like face to face. So I feel like I've sat through like every version. I mean, I haven't, but it feels like I have because I've learned so much from you. But I thought we're not going to do any of that today. I thought it'd be actually nice to chat to Libby, not Libby, the speech and language therapist, but Libby Hill herself, and like get to know you because we've spoken for hours and we got chucked out of restaurants for being a bit too late.
that's true.
So I thought we'll get to know you a little bit. So who or what inspired Libby Hill to become Libby Hill as we know her now? What sort of sparked your interest in speech and language therapy? Why did you do it?
Well, I've got three sisters, and two of them are twins, and they're 6 years younger than me. And because they're twins, they had delayed language, and they actually had their own communication system. So they had their own language. And interestingly enough, they still occasionally recall some of the words that they used to use. But we had a speech and language therapist come round, and she was very cool. And I thought, oh, that's the job for me. She did drawing and she played with toys. And I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, totally.
So from a very early age, I knew that's what I wanted to do, which people thought was a bit odd.
But do you know, isn't it lovely when you find that person as a child who really sparks that sort of inspiration? And I know that one of my daughters, Marnie, she's been into your clinic and she met one of your speech and language therapists. And she had exactly the same experience where she's like, wow, look at her trainers. Look at the way she talks. She understands me. She's down with the kids. Look at her hair. It's amazing. Love her car. Do you think she had to go to university? I had all this on the way back. And she was so inspired. And I suppose it's that connection, isn't it, as well, that you're like, that I suppose it must have been quite nice for somebody to come in and get your sisters. They understood your sisters, which would have meant so much to you.
Yes, definitely, because she was, well, there's nothing wrong. They're just twins. They'll catch up. They'll get it eventually. And they did, obviously, eventually. One still started school without really talking to anybody else. But yeah, she was right. So yeah, I liked her.
And has she always been quiet? You know, with her being the one that was quieter to start with, has she always been quieter?
Yes, yes. Because obviously with twins, as you all know, there's a hierarchy with twins. Because if you were born first, you tell everybody about that. Well, I'm the older one, and it was half an hour between them. Um, but
Oh,
uh, but yeah, it's very important, you know.
yeah, absolutely. And have you had an interest in twins? You know, because I know that you've assessed one of my twins, but have you got that interest yourself in twins?
Yes, yes, it's fascinating. And it's particularly interesting when you look at twins who are Gestalt language processors, because quite often they'll copy each other, copying. So it adds an extra dynamic to it.
Yeah, I mean, with my girls, as you know, I laugh, don't I, when we speak about my girls because one of my girls is absolutely your biggest fan and you are her soulmate, and I've not been able to tell her that we're
She's
doing this
lovely.
today. I just think that she'll just gate crash it. But she's always copied her sister, and now she's got to a point where, they're 10 and she's like, "I don't need her anymore." And her sister now, the other twin, has gone, "Well, what's my role then? I feel a little bit lost. You
Yeah,
don't need me anymore."
no.
But
No,
twins,
it's fascinating dynamics with twins, definitely.
it really is. So like, what do you think then that you would be doing if you hadn't chosen this career path?
Well, I have done various things along the way while I've been a speech and language therapist. So, so s- quite a few things really. So when the boys were little, I worked. We had a family business, so
Oh,
we had a garden building business. So we took that from being, just something really to occupy my husband. I was a chief speech and language therapist when I met him, and we just needed something to occupy him. He wasn't happy with what he was doing, so we just set up this thing that was supposed to keep him occupied. Only it grew, so we were the biggest independent supplier of garden buildings in the UK. So I did that along the way. So I set up all the systems and everything for that. And then we did property development as well. So that started, it was always dangerous when I left him to his own devices. When I was in hospital having my younger son, he came back and he said, "I went to an auction today. I've bought this 18th century old gentleman's residence. It's got planning permission for 9 flats." And I said, "Oh, right, okay." So instead of going straight home with my little boy within his rocker tot, we actually had to go by there to have a look at
oh
it.
God.
And then we had this idiotic idea that actually, instead of doing the flats, why don't we do it into a bar? We could have a really nice bar.
Oh
So it
my
was quite
God.
lovely. And so we did that for a few years as well.
Wow.
And
I didn't know any of this.
no, I know that, and I
Awful.
taught aerobics for years and years and years, and, so I you know what it's like with ADHD, you don't really need the downtime.
No,
So
no.
while I've been a speech and language therapist, I've still done lots of other things, and at times cut back the speech and language therapy to allow that to happen. But now, sometimes I think, yeah, something like the hospitality would be good because I'd still get to meet all the people and but it might be a bit simpler. So I wouldn't be arguing every day or fighting every day like I have to at the moment. So occasionally I
Yeah.
think, oh, that would be quite nice to do something like that.
And we're so similar, and I know that, we've spoken about this for hours and hours, days probably, about, this sort of need to be busy, and whatever the reason is behind that, but this need to be busy, but also this sort of real inbuilt sort of deep passion for just growing as a human, and the huge ambition clearly that you've had to get to where you are now, but also to have achieved sort of shot to the top in so many other ways along the way. um but do you ever feel like, with me, I know I certainly feel like this, that I sometimes look at other people who have what looks like to me a really simplistic life, and like you said, just do a job, go home,
Oh,
back to the
yeah.
family, it's not on their mind so much. And I think to myself, "Oh, I wonder what life would be like that." I kind of envy that lack of, I don't want to be rude to anyone, but a lack of ambition, and they're very happy. They're really content. And I
Mm.
just can't. Do you ever feel like that where you go, "Oh, I wish I could be a bit like."
Very, very occasionally, where somebody's telling me that, oh, well, they don't go out in an evening, they don't do anything, they come home, they watch a lot of soaps and things like that, and they're really happy with
Yeah.
what they're doing. Um, but that's just not me.
No, I felt quite uncomfortable with
So,
you saying it then, when you were like, "I
yeah,
don't go out, watch a lot of soap."
yeah,
I haven't watched soaps for like 20 years. It
yeah,
makes
me neither.
me anxious.
Me neither. I can't commit to watching anything either. I don't like series, so I can do it if it's a one-off. I wanted to watch the Boys Own one, but then when they said it's several of them, I thought, no, I could do a one, but I can't do a series.
It's I can't do a film.
No, I can't either.
And
I've
obviously,
seen the
I'm married to
beginning
a
of not,
filmmaker.
but not the end. I
No,
just
no, I
can't.
just can't. I can't sit still in a cinema.
No.
I'm like the
It's
worst
better in a
human.
cinema 'Cause in a cinema, obviously, there isn't anything else to do, so
Mhm.
and it's big and it's there. So I'm better in a cinema, but in at home, I just, I've got a Netflix account, but I never use it. So
I binge stuff. So like The Traitors, I quite enjoyed The Traitors. And when they said, we're going to bring out three at a time, I was having almost like panic attacks with like, I can't cope with the fact that there's only three. I'd like to just watch them all. Like just get it all done, not have to wait. I'm not
yeah, I
like
don't like the waiting.
no. But yeah, sorry, I've digressed. I've got a feeling we're going to digress a lot today because that's just who we are. Um, but so in terms of your career, then, well, your several careers. So like you've got careers running alongside each other. And do you know what I've noticed now, and do correct me if I'm wrong, that even though, your title is speech and language therapist or, highly specialist speech and language therapist, there is so much within that that you are specialist within. So it's not just you're a selective mutism specialist or not just a DLD specialist. You've almost like branched out all those careers you had bunched in together and have now become several careers within speech and language
Yeah.
therapy.
But
How's
I
that
think
happened?
that's because if I get interested in something, I want to know all about it, and I want to be the best at
You shouldn't
at
have.
being able to do it, or to do it to the best of my ability, basically.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So, it I've always had an interest in DLD. That's always been there. So that was sort of the first thing that I was fascinated about, and I wanted to know more, and I wanted to know as much as possible. But then my first specialist post was actually in 1988, and there were a lot of
Oh, yeah.
children with DLD that came out of language units. It was in the Dudley area, and so there were a lot of these children who came out of the language units because we had three language units. We'd had four in Aylesbury. Now there aren't any. So children come out of the language units into mainstream. So they'd created this post that was half funded by the local authority and half by the health authority. And so I'd got all these DLD children, but then all these autistic children then joined my caseload who were in mainstream but struggling massively. And so then obviously I'm thinking, well, I've got to do my best for those children. So I need to know all about those children. Um, and the selective mutism came later when I went independent because I knew if I had somebody who had selective mutism that came to me, I wouldn't actually know what to do.
Yeah.
So I needed to get up to speed, and then and so obviously I did. But yeah, so it's been I never want to be in a position where I would feel I was letting somebody down because I didn't know enough. I will always say, I've just somebody's just contacted me that to say could I see this older person,
Yeah.
but that's not my skill set. There'll be people who are better at seeing that person, who've got better skills and will do better by that person. So I'll always say if I can't do something, or I don't think I'm the best person to do that. But ordinarily I want to know more. And
Yeah.
then what it's like with ADHD. It's not a rabbit hole because you're learning more and you're learning more and you're learning more. You might be procrastinating about doing something else, but you're going, you know exactly what that's like.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's just happened really. Um,
I just love it though because when people ask me questions about certain things, I just refer to whatever I've learned from you because I trust that that is the most up to date. Like the pressure on you, um, because I'm thinking, well, Libby said
yeah,
so, and
and it will be because I belong. So for the DLD, I belong to NAPLIC,
yeah,
and so they are the best people in the UK for looking at DLD and making sure that you're up to date with that. It's great with the selective mutism because I'm a SMIRA associate. So we have lots of up to date discussions. So we've got an ongoing one at the moment about maybe calling a type of mutism reactive mutism. We're not there yet. We've got more questions at the moment than we have answers.
yeah.
But it just means that you're at the forefront of the decision making and you're keeping up to date. And then with the PDA, I
Mm,
belong to the PDA research groups here and North America, and obviously work closely with the PDA Society. So again, I'm getting information as things are changing, as things are happening.
Yeah.
So I'm really privileged to be in those positions because
Well, yeah, but
you
you've
know,
earned it because you show an enormous amount of respect to each community, and so they can see that they're safe with you and that you want to do your best, and that shines through in everything that you do. So
that's what.
it's that trust is built up, and the PDA community is one that is very suspicious of anybody coming into that community, and rightly so, because there is such a lot of judgment and such little understanding. And you would probably agree that even at the top level we still don't know enough,
No,
because we
not
don't
at all. Not
we're
at
still
all.
researching. um
Because the research is the research isn't there. So the clinical knowledge is around 7 years ahead of the academic research, and that's not a good place to be because with DLD, I can look to the academic research to say, look, Susan Ebel says it should be one-to-one direct speech and language therapy from a qualified speech and language therapist, or so I can talk about how many times. I can be really, really specific. But with the other aspects of speech and language therapy, it's much more difficult to do that. So I can't quote the academic research. And the reality is, we need the academic research. We do need the clinical research. We shouldn't be dismissing the clinical workings and the clinical knowledge, but we also need the lived experience. And we need those three things to come together really to drive things forwards. And with the PDA, previously, they haven't separated out PDA from autism with extreme demand avoidance. So all the stuff to date hasn't focused actually on PDA, it's looked at marked demand avoidance.
yeah,
And that is the problem.
yeah,
And unfortunately, they're aware of it now. So anybody new that's going to Manchester or with Francesca Happe at UCL, they're now looking at the difference. But all the things that have so far had their ethics considered, it's just demand avoidance still.
So, what is school avoidance? Now, a lot of people call this school refusal, and it's really important that we reframe how we look at this, because actually, our children aren't refusing to attend school, they're actually unable to attend school. Now, if a child was
It's a powerful letter with a peppy sound that pops up in some of our favourite words. As we continue our reading adventure, we'll discover how the letter P helps us describe all sorts of things. Get ready for a perfect and playful journey.
To get excellent outcomes for the young people with special educational needs and disabilities. And what this means is that I get to see lots of different graduated response.
Meet our neighbours in space, the planets of the solar system. We live on Earth, but we're part of a much bigger family. There are 8 planets that all orbit or travel around the sun. Let's start with the closest
How
to
to
the sun.
teach our children and young people the skills they need to regulate their own behaviour, but in a way that really meets them where they are, rather than encouraging them to mask their behaviour so that the adults around them find them easier to manage. We hope you find this course super interesting and that you get lots out of it. So without further ado, let's go on to the first module.
But what would you say then in your speech and language career has been the most rewarding part?
Since I've been independent, because I haven't got anybody telling me what to do who isn't qualified to do that. So the reason why I left the NHS, and I did it sort of gradually, because obviously in the NHS you get a good big salary, you get a good pension, you know what you're going to be earning at the end of the month. Um, I got, I was head of the department, and the manager called me in and he said, this child here, this child, and I said, yeah, Freddie was called. Freddie, and he said, well, he's been seen 26 times. And I said, has he? And he went, yes, he has. What have you got to say about that? And I said, well, he's got Down syndrome. So we met him when he was born because he was having feeding problems.
Yeah.
He continued to have feeding problems that needed supporting. And then he had language difficulties. We've been supporting with his language. And I said, and we will be supporting him when he goes into school. We'll need to keep hold of him until he's passed on to the adult services. Freddie's got a lot going for him, but he's going to need the support. Well, absolutely not, he said. And the thing is, the speech and language therapist, it was the same therapist. So she was called Anne Irving. She was great. She'd seen him from birth, and she could have then seen him through till he was 18. We passed on to adult services. But I said, if we discharge him after 6 sessions, it won't be Anne that picks him up because she'll have filled that slot.
Mm.
It's likely to be somebody else. And then you're building that relationship again with the parent and then obviously with little Freddie. So he said, I don't care. And I said, but you know nothing about Down syndrome. You know nothing about language and communication development. So what gives you the right to tell me how to tell my staff to work? And he said,
Absolutely.
because I'm the manager and I'm paid more than you.
Oh,
And I just thought, that's it, I can't do this anymore.
no,
Because how can you sleep at night if you know you can't do what people need?
no, no.
So I left and I took a backward step career-wise to it was called Longdon Hall, so it's part of the Honourmead group. And it was at that time it was for autism and complex communication, and I absolutely loved it. I'm still in touch with a lot of the staff from there because we were a proper team and everybody worked together. So it didn't matter what your role was, we pulled together as a team. And it was tough, but it was brilliant. And we did the absolute best we could. Looking back, there's things we could have done a lot better, but we didn't know that then. We did the best with what we got, with what we could at the time. And so I loved that. But then uh, uh, I'll cut a long story short, but I had to leave there for health reasons, and and that's when I went independent. But being independent just gives me the flexibility to do the training. You know, when I was in the NHS, you had to beg to go on training courses, and now they might not even have a budget for training. So I can do any courses that I want. I can spend as long as I need to on cases. I can do what it takes,
Yeah.
basically.
And I think that's the beauty, isn't it? And it's quite frustrating for us as an organisation because we hear such a lot, as I know you have, of people saying, "Who's paid for this report?" Oh, it's the parents. Okay, that's an independent person, almost
Mm,
like you're not
support.
qualified. They just bought them off eBay.
Yeah.
You know, they bought a diagnosis off eBay, um, and it's really, really frustrating because I constantly explain to people that one of the reasons we work so closely with independent expert witnesses and clinicians like you guys um, is because when you go to university or you go on training, you get to learn everything. But then when you look at NHS commissioning, it's like, no, just this bit, please. Yeah, well, it would be like somebody going into a hospital and getting diagnosed with cancer and going, oh, hang on a minute, you shouldn't have diagnosed them with that. We don't commission that kind of cancer. It can't exist. They're going to
Yeah.
have to just die because we're not going to allow that one. Um, and I feel quite often it feels like that, where, like you said, with that child with Down syndrome, they have a need.
Mm.
Who cares what it costs? Like
And
this
if
is
you can
the
see what that
NHS.
need is, how can you not describe it and put in what provisions needed? I mean,
Absolutely.
I think it's very, very unfair for an NHS speech and language therapist's report to be compared with ours.
Mhm.
So I think I told you I met somebody at the local gym, really nice therapist, but she was working with adults. And after it was a step class, so after about the third step class, she said, "Oh, I'm going to be working with pediatrics now." And I said, "Oh, great! Welcome to the better side. You know, it's so much more hopeful, and it's great. Oh, what a good move that is." And the week afterwards, she said, "Oh, I've got to see one of yours. I've got to write an EHCP report." And I said, "Oh, what training have you had in writing EHCP reports? And she
Mm.
said, well, I haven't. And I said, and how long are they going to give you for the assessment? And she said, I've got 40 minutes. I said, and how long are they giving you to write the report? She said, well, they're not actually. I'm going to have to take it home at the weekend and do it, but I'm going to spend at least an hour on it. And I said, oh, do you know, it's so unfair because, you know, we would spend 2 hours with the client, but then with information gathering. So that's another sort of maybe hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And then, you know, we're reading everybody else's reports so that we can cross-reference everything. And then even me, who I tend to be quicker than the others, I need 4 hours to sit and actually write the report. So it's so unfair to compare the two.
Absolutely. And
And
it's
we're often commissioned by the local authorities, sometimes the same local authorities that were saying, well, we're not accepting theirs because it's private.
yes,
Uh, but quite often they've already commissioned us. Um, so, and we do the same level of report, whoever's paying, because that's just incidental. It's not important who's paying.
no.
Let's talk about the time when Libby was on TV.
So, welcome back. Thank you for sticking with us. So, Libby, before the break, we touched upon your celebrity lifestyle um, when you when you were on TV, and I know that I saw you, and then years later met you, and thought I recognise her. I wonder why I recognise her. Well, she's just really friendly, and then it wasn't until somebody said, "Oh yeah, yeah, born naughty," and I was like, "Oh." Yes, yes, that's where I know her from. How did it all happen? How did it come about?
Well, a friend of a friend had been asked if they would like to do a screen test to do that, and she said absolutely not.
Mm,
And they said, well, we need a speech and language therapist. I think they had asked several others, but we're not a terribly confident group.
yeah,
So she said, I do know somebody who probably has got the confidence, and she talks okay. So they contacted me, and I did a screen test, and they said, yeah, we'd really like you to do it, and it just went from there basically. So but
mm,
it was a very interesting exercise, um because well, you see how many shots and how many takes people have to do for a start. You know, walking down the street, it's not just one take. You might have to do it 6 or 7 times, and you're knocking on someone's front door, so you probably got to do that 4 times, and then maybe a car went by, so you got to do it a fifth time, and then you got to knock on the door again while they film from the other side of the door.
yeah, yeah, and it was
So
all
it's
these different
a
angles,
long
like,
process for one film. But of course, with the children, you've only got one take. So
they've got to get it.
that
They've
was
got
the
it.
okay. And they had cameras everywhere when we were with the children. But it's those other, it's the incidental bits that you think look really quick, but they take ages. Um, but
Too.
it was fun to do. I did really enjoy doing it.
And was there anything in particular about it that you really took from it that you thought this part of the experience is going to really change my life, my practice, any
No,
life
I
changing?
think not. It was about needing the evidence.
Yeah,
So I think if you're under more scrutiny than you normally are, you've really got to be certain about what you are finding.
yeah,
So it is that I really took that from, because we did have we actually filmed lots of families. We had some families who reported for safeguarding purposes because they were seeking diagnoses when perhaps they'd been told before they weren't autistic, but then now they were seeking another go at it or whatever. So
yeah.
there were loads of families we couldn't actually use that would have been really good. And we had one family where they we didn't feel it was autism. I didn't. The ADOS score came out that they weren't. The CCC2 said they weren't. The paediatrician didn't think they were, but um, the parent was convinced they were. In fact, they were so convinced that when they were all mic'd up and going to the toilet, they in the toilet, but still we've got our headphones on, we can hear what's going on. And she says, Andrew, will you act a bit more autistic?
Oh, Oh no.
And no, I'd spent the equivalent probably of 2 days with him. The pediatrician had spent the whole day with him. We were really sure that it wasn't autism. And but we did say to Dawn when we were going to do the feedback, look, this is going to be a tricky one because they are convinced that he is autistic. And so Dawn was really nice, and she said, "We've got some great news for you. We don't think he's autistic. We think
Ah,
that his difficulties are explained by his ADHD diagnosis. So isn't that great?"
yeah.
And they were like, "No." And then on the Monday, so that was the Saturday, on the Monday, the producer rang me and he said, "Right, I'm going to need to film you. I need to come to film you because the parents are absolutely furious and Channel 4 want to capture this as well."
Oh,
I said, "Are they having a chat with Rabbi too?" And they went, "No, just you." I went, "Okay." Well, they sent a person to film at my house, so I did it online, Skype at the time, and then obviously they'd got a camera with the family, and I thought, "Oh, this is going to be dreadful. This is going to be horrible." So I thought, "Well, I'm just going to go in there first." And
yeah,
so I said, "Oh, thank you so much for your time today. I really, we didn't have enough time to give the feedback about why we found that, and because I'd been so thorough and ticked all the boxes, I could justify why." And I
yeah,
think is something then that you do take forward. So every time I do an EHCP assessment, I know what I'm saying. I can justify because X, Y, Z.
yeah,
I'm not just, oh yeah, on the Kelf they didn't do very well, so it must be that. I'm correlating it and triangulating it. So I took that from it, but it was interesting because 2 weeks later they went to Carol Stott and got an autism diagnosis from 20 minutes just in a clinic on her own. And I was a bit upset about that. And I said to Ravi, "Well, what did we miss?" And he said, "We didn't." He said, "Sometimes with these more subtle cases, diagnosing autism is a bit like appraising fine art." And he said, "So we can't blame ourselves because we did the best that we could and we can stand by our decision.
yes,
However, we respect somebody else's." Um, and so to be very sure at what you're saying
yeah.
um, is really important.
Oh, it's a minefield as well, isn't it? Because, even with the most thorough assessments, you can't always pick everything up, because we're we move and change as humans. So how you present today is different to tomorrow, and
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I mean, this morning, I had a meeting with an OT. It's not one that I do assessments with, so I don't know her as well as a couple of the other teams.
yeah,
But but yeah, I'd seen somebody and she'd seen somebody, and I couldn't find anything that was different about him,
yeah,
um, because I didn't see him. I've yet to interview school,
yeah,
or to see him in school. And but when I was talking to her today, obviously there were things I knew there would be. That's why I was talking to her. But obviously on the sensory side of it, there's lots of things that mean that his difficulties are dynamic. So they are going to be different in different situations.
yeah,
And she'd seen him in school crowded and pushing and shoving, and whereas he'd been polite, he'd been lovely, he'd followed all the instructions, everything was age appropriate. But if he can't do that level in real life, then that's a problem, isn't it?
yeah. No, absolutely. And I think this is one of the things that people don't realize is, as neurodivergent people ourselves, we know that when we are in an environment that we've designed with the people that we're comfortable with and we feel safe, um, there's nothing different about us. We
No.
just we're able to operate our brain in a very high functioning way. And I'm not saying high functioning this and that. I'm saying in that moment,
Yeah,
we
we can be our best self.
yeah. But then you put us in an environment that, we can't see or feel people that we feel safe with. We feel very unfamiliar with the things around us. We're constantly scanning for risk. We're not sure, are we safe? And then you start to lose doubt in yourself. Can I keep myself safe? My sensory is overloaded. I can't hear the important parts I need to hear in order to know what I'm doing next. all these things impact us, and then you see the response come out, and and whether that is, your freeze, flight, whatever, fight or flight. Um, and, selective mutism, I know for me, whilst it's gotten better over the years, I know it's gotten better because I designed and I'm very forceful in my 40s to say, I don't feel comfortable in that scenario. I'm not doing it. Well, I couldn't
No,
have done that when I was younger.
no.
Um, and so whilst, a lot of people will say, "Oh, have you grown out of it?" Absolutely not. I have actually grown into it. So I start to actually own it for myself and be able to self-advocate a lot better. So I don't ever get put into those positions where I don't feel that I can speak. Um, but yeah, it is fascinating. I don't think enough attention is given to sort of that fluctuating capacity.
It's massive, absolutely massive. A lot of the children that I see, they score beautifully on the KELF, but then when we're doing some of what they think is just having a chat,
Yeah.
I don't see the same level because they're not like, oh, right, I've got to do really well on this. Okay, bring it on. Okay. They're relaxed. And so I see a completely different pattern for the rest of the system.
Talking about that, I have seen you in action doing a speech and language assessment. Now, everybody who knows me knows that I am not a dog person because I've got to bring Ralph into this,
Oh,
okay?
yeah.
Did you know Libby is a published author? Let's explore that in a little bit more detail.
And the fact that, you are a published author of several books. So I know that you love to share your knowledge and you love to collate information to validate others as well, which I'm sure is, a lot to do with what was sort of going on behind the scenes before these books were created. But talk to us about your new book.
Well, the new one is it's called Doing What It Takes, and it's case studies basically. So about 2014, I think it was, I was doing a presentation just showing how you don't have to stick to tried and tested things. If you bring into a more problem solving approach, it will help you deal with some of the more complicated children with selective mutism. And the lady who had founded Smira was listening, and she said, "You need to do this into a book because there's only 20 speech and language therapists in this audience today, but you need to get to other speech and language therapists and to show parents that yes, okay, the selective mutism resource manual is amazing, and I reference it throughout. But what if it doesn't quite work? Or what if you want to bring a dog in? Or what? So it's just a collection of children that I've worked with. And what I've tried to do is pick children who are very similar to many other children that fit a similar profile. So I just talk about, well, what we did and to make it successful and how you can combine looking at the selective mutism resource manual with a problem solving approach, looking at a bigger picture, bringing in some NLP, bringing in animal assisted therapy, bringing in CBT as long as they're not autistic,
Yeah.
um, and just looking at what we did so that if there are people out there whose children and young people are going through something and nobody's actually doing anything about it, they can see, well, there is lots of things that you could do. You just need to have the confidence to
Yeah.
do something slightly different.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's basically what it is. So it's just called Doing What It Takes.
And I suppose as well, for people reading the book, I know for me as a first time send parent 20 years ago, um, I felt so alone. I was like, how am I the only person experiencing this? Are we really weird? What have I done wrong? What's wrong with me? Why is my child, why am I not getting this? Why am I not doing it very well? And there is a lot of sort of self blame as a parent. So I guess this book just offers so much by way of validation, the feeling that you're not alone because it has been done before. Look, it's all written there.
Yeah. And it doesn't, it's not a quick fix, or if the traditional things haven't worked, that doesn't mean that you can't achieve success. And I do also believe that all forms of communication are valid.
Yeah.
So, occasionally, particularly within the autistic community, I've had children who've said, but I'm fine as I am. I talk to everybody I want to talk to. And that is fine by me. Yes, I'll have problems probably with the parent, but
Yeah.
if that's what they've said, then that is fine by me. I'll support that.
Yeah.
And should they want to do something in the future, they know where I am. And occasionally they will come back. Years later, you probably don't remember me. I will, because I always remember the children.
Yeah.
But if they're happy, I'm happy.
Well, Libby, it's been an absolute delight. We have covered about 5,400 topics, as we would expect.
As usual.
As we would expect. And I'm really looking forward to everybody listening to this. I hope that everybody's enjoyed it. Please do give us feedback. We love hearing from you. But until next time, thank you so much.
My
And
pleasure.
we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this month's episode of Sip of Sunshine. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you have any topics that you think we should cover, please do comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'll be back again next month with another episode.